All right, Chad, we'll go to you now with your potential suitor for Timo Meier, and really, this is the second team that kind of comes up in a lot of conversations when it comes to potential suitors for the big Sharks power forwards. So let's get to yours and your mock trades.
Yeah, that's right. The Carolina Hurricanes are among the top suitors, in my opinion, to land Timo Meier. And it's because, surprise, surprise, they don't have Max Pacioretty in their lineup anymore. You know, if you asked me 2 months ago if Carolina was going to be in on Timo Meier, obviously I would have said no. They have Pacioretty coming in on from their LTIR spot. He's going to play well for them down the stretch. He makes $7 million. Well, unfortunately, he did come back, but then was re-injured shortly after with the same Achilles injury, and we don't really know what his future is going to look like. That's a tough injury to have. I think it's similar to the Erik Karlsson injury, which just completely destroyed what he was as a player for like 3 seasons, and now all of a sudden he's back. So I think it's kind of up in the air, and who knows what's going to happen with Pacioretty, if he's going to re-sign or whatever. But for that reason, for Pacioretty not being in the lineup, I think Timo Meier makes a ton of sense for Carolina, who is just having a fantastic season this year, and really they're built very well top to bottom, but could always use more scoring. They don't have many guys who are above a point per game. I haven't looked today, but I think last time I looked, it was only Aho who was above a point per game. So they could use some scoring like that in their top six. And Carolina is a team that's criticized for not being super tough when it comes to the playoffs. So again, adding a guy like Timo Meier gives you some grit, some sandpaper up front. He throws a ton of hits. So the fit to me is perfect for Carolina. In terms of the package and the deal that I think could shake out between the two teams, I mean, obviously going to Carolina is Timo Meier at 50% retained at a bare minimum. I think if they wanted to get a third team involved, like Toronto did with the Ryan O'Reilly deal, they could do that. I'm not sure they need to right now. They have almost $4 million in projected LTIR space that is usable right now. So I don't know. It would depend what other moves they want to make. But at the very minimum, 50% retained on Timo Meier. And in return, this is kind of a crapshoot. This is where the deal breaks down, because it starts with a first round pick and then it ends with 2 or 3 of Carolina's B range prospects, because I think Carolina has a ton of those. And I'm looking at some players here. One that comes to mind is the 28th overall pick in 2019, Ryan Suzuki. Currently has 17 points in 25 AHL games this year for Chicago. Another one is Jack Drury, 42nd overall in 2018, 16 points in 18 AHL games this season. And then as a third piece on top of the first two and a first round pick, I would pick one of Simon Forsmark, Noel Gunler, Zion Nybeck, or Gleb Trikazov, or Cruz Lucius. They have a ton of players, none of whom I think are projected to be like sure bet top 6 players. I think there's a lot of magic beans in their prospect pool, despite it being very good, given the fact that they're a contending team. But that's how I see this deal shaking out. I feel like it's a deal similar to, like you mentioned, Case, with Taylor Hall a few years back, where they just get a bunch and kind of hope for the best in San Jose, that is. So that's the deal. What do you guys think about that? It's kind of loosely constructed, but that's how it stands.
So how many prospects were they getting? Sorry?
3 prospects and a first round pick, because I think all of the prospects that I mentioned, with the exception of maybe Noel Gunler, who was a second round pick recently, are in the B range. So I think 3 B prospects and a first.
So is that better than an A prospect, a B prospect, a current player, a first and a fourth? Because the only reason I actually think that he can come to New Jersey is Tom Fitzgerald said, before you trade him, call me and I'll one up it. And I think that New Jersey can one up that Carolina deal. I like all those players, and I like the idea, because you're saying everything I was saying about Taylor Hall trade, and like San Jose has ranked the 17th pipeline in the league, so they need a ton of prospects. And this trade makes a lot of sense to me, and I do like it. But I think that in this competitive market, it's going to get beat. I think that the one thing Carolina and what I've read has to offer for Timo Meier, and I don't think that they want to do it, is Seth Jarvis.
100%.
And to me, I don't know if I would do that either. He's really fit in there. He's stepped up. He's having not as good of a season this year as he did last year, but that's a great player, and he's only going to get better as well. He's still young. But yeah, like, again, I think that this deal makes a lot of sense, and I like the, first and then tons of prospects, because that's what San Jose needs, but I think it can get topped.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. Although I do like the package, and Carolina kind of flies under the radar when it comes to having a really strong prospect pool. There are a lot of names that you can mention there. One name that I'm kind of surprised you didn't mention, Chad, was probably their best defensive prospect, and that's Scott Morrow, a second-round pick in 2021. So you could always throw him in there. We talked a few minutes ago about how they're kind of thin when it comes to defensive prospects, so he could be in there as well. But yeah, if you're comparing this to the package that the first one that you came up with, Case, I mean, that one definitely beats it. But still, I think that this would be a solid return for San Jose. Solid 3-4 assets there, and Carolina gets a player who would just make them even better. And again, like I said when talking about the Hurricanes a couple of weeks ago, just a guy that would give them some easy goals, which they really desperately need. So I like it.
Yeah, I mean, Carolina's having the second best season in the league after the Boston Bruins. So yeah, they need that one piece to add to push them over the top.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense for Carolina. Even when I was mentioning this package, I don't know that it's the best available deal that they could put together. I think obviously that best package starts with Seth Jarvis, but I just don't think it makes sense for Carolina to do that, because it doesn't make them that much better, I don't think, in the long term, to get rid of a player like Seth Jarvis, a good young player who's in your lineup now and contributing. Like he just got his first hat trick the other night. I don't think it makes sense to get rid of him, even though Timo Meier is very, very good. Like it's a fine line you have to walk as a GM. And if the fit's not there because of the price, then, oh, well, you move on to the next player, and maybe you add somewhere else. Maybe it's on the back end. Maybe it's in your bottom six instead. So I think it makes sense for Carolina, but if the price is too steep, they're likely not going to pay it. The reason I brought them up as a team is because they just have so many B-level prospects who I think, the uncertainty sort of ranges between all of those guys, and there are some who are more certain than others, but I just look at their prospect pool, and I like a lot of the players, but they're just all B-level prospects, you know what I mean?
One thing I will also say about, like, I also like all the players you named. I've been pretty vocal about how I think Carolina drafts pretty good. They're not afraid to pick a undersized player that I like. But I think it does kind of fit under the same category as Mukhamadullin for the Devils, where the Devils are pretty high on Mukhamadullin, and they picked him earlier than most people would think. But Carolina is also picking all these players that are slipping, and they slip out of the first round, like Nyback and Gunler, and there's one more I can't remember. But these are guys that slip, so it's guys that Carolina's pretty high on, and who knows if San Jose's thinking the same thing. So kind of the same argument for against Mukhamadullin is pretty similar to some of these B guys for Carolina, guys that I like, but I don't know if they're necessarily the target for other teams.
Very true.
And with Carolina, we know that they set a price, and they don't go over it, and if they feel that it's too much, then they'll move on to the next thing. And they do like players with terms. So, you got to think that if they do end up taking a big swing and acquiring a player like Timo Meier, they're going to want to sign him right away because they do like players with term. They don't like rentals. And again, Dundon and Don Waddell, they set a price and they don't go over it. They have a value on players that they think is fair, and they don't go over it.